Welcome to the ParentNet podcast by Focus on the Family Singapore. In each episode, we will be speaking with everyday parents and practitioners as they share with us gems from their parenthood journey. Keep tuning in to learn with us as we figure it out together.
Hello and welcome to the ParentNet podcast. My name is June and I'm your host for this episode. In today's episode, we will be talking about how to keep the precious father-daughter relationship strong, even through the rather unpredictable teen years. Fathers play a crucial role in ensuring the well-being of their daughters. Research shows that having close relationships with fathers during adolescence strongly relates to the daughter's positive self-esteem and life satisfaction. That can also positively influence how their daughters perceive and interact with future men in their lives when they model healthy and respectful relationships. So for today's episode, I'm really happy to have Joshua and his elder daughter, Shawna, here with us. Joshua is the principal trainer of Focus on the Family Singapore and a proud father of two daughters, Shawna and Jasmine. And today we have Shawna here with us, and she is going to be graduating soon from her health management course at the Polytechnic. So welcome, Josh and Shawna. Would you like to start off by sharing a fun fact about yourselves?
Thanks, June, for having us. It is really nice to be here with Shawna. So a fun fact about us is that we are quite a sporty family. Specifically, we love to play tennis. So I remember bringing the whole family, even when the children were toddlers, to the tennis court to play tennis. Or rather, picking tennis ball at the beginning. So I'm glad to say that even after so many years of looking back, Shawna and Jasmine are still playing tennis. They're even playing for the poly level tennis. And so I'm glad to see that happening for them, even though we started with it and they are continuing with it right now.
Yeah. Personally, I run a small business online selling jewelry and keychains with a few friends of mine.
Wow, interesting. So sporty, and then there's also the aesthetics and dressing up through the jewelry and stuff. So thanks for sharing, you guys. It sounds like you've got some interesting hobbies already, right, in your family.
Yeah.
So maybe we'll start off this conversation with you, Josh. Could you share a little bit about how you managed to keep the communication with Shawna open through especially her teenage years?
I think one of the ways we do that, we started having, I would say, a little tradition at home when the two girls were younger by having a daily check-in just before they go to bed. So before we tuck them into bed, we always have a family time to just talk about the day, sometimes read a book. And so that was when they were younger. Obviously, when it comes to the teenage years, and even right now, because their schedule seems to be fuller than mine. But we will always, at the moment, make time for our daily meal together. I find that that's a very important time for us as a family. So we keep that, quite regimentedly because we want to protect that time. And I realized that when we are able to do that, just to have a meal together, a lot of conversation happen as a result of that, So through that time, a dedicated time spent together when they were younger, through the tugging in before bedtime, and now family meals time together. I find that it has created this safe space, and the children know that this is a time where we're going to talk about each other's day, but it's also a time where they can really share their thoughts and concern. And obviously, they know that it is without judgment or without fear, that they can actually just really talk openly during this dedicated time. I think one of the other ways is really to show interest in what they do. So like you hear, Shawna's really interested at the moment.
At the moment, yes.
in creating and making bracelets with beads and all. So we try to support that. I think when she first started, we gave her a little bit of insight into how to set up the business, what to look into, and constantly on the lookout for unique merchandise and beads, just to add to the collection. And so just being able to show genuine interest in what they enjoy doing helps in really keeping that communication open. I think last but not least is really making that effort, right, to participate in their hobbies or in the things that they are doing in school. So I remembered when they were younger, it was piano recitals, and now that they are much older in poly, during their competitions, we will go and watch them. One of the very few parents around, but we still dedicate that time. I think the most pressuring one is when both Shawna and Jasmine were in competition against one another.
Yeah.
So, but just being there, I think is really a way of us showing our support to them, to let them know that we can talk about anything under the sun. And that's some of the ways we try to keep that line of communication open with our children.
Yeah. Well, that's really wonderful what you've been talking about. I'm hearing about the tradition of having your daily meal together. And I'm just wondering, how do you manage your schedule, Shawna, when you have such a busy poly life and social life? And how do you manage to actually come home on time and make time to spend with your family?
I think it's mainly because like my dad said, we always make time to just talk to one another, especially during dinner. So I do make it a habit to at least try to come home for dinner every time I'm out with my friends. So at some point I'll be like, hey guys, I need to go back home. It's time for dinner for me, so I need to go back. Yeah, so it's like just putting a cap on how much I try to spend with my friends, because I also feel like it's important to spend that time with family. And especially when you get older, you get busier and work comes along. So when work comes into the picture, it's also like you want to spend that time during dinner.
Yeah, even as I'm listening, I'm just feeling so inspired because my own kids are starting to be in that teenhood phase, right? And sometimes, they really want to hang out with their friends, and it's hard to always have that space to everybody come home for dinner together. So really inspiring, you guys. Yeah, good work at keeping that up. And I'm also wondering, as you make time for family, it's a time for coming together, just hearing about your day, right? And also hearing about your interests, your hobbies, or what project you're working on, right? What about that space for you as an individual to explore your own interests, to explore your own projects? How do you step back, Josh, and allow Shawna that space to actually grow and find herself in a way in this world?
One of the things that we have always tried to communicate, and I remembered that when I first started being very intentional in telling them, not just, think about it as a group principle, but to communicate that to Shawna and tell her, hey, I remember when I first started doing this, it was a bit awkward. It wasn't over dinner. It was like just some random conversation. And then I would just bring this out and say, hey, Shawna, Jasmine, you know that if you need to tell us anything, it doesn't matter what it is. There's nothing too big or too small to bring to the table. So just remember that you can come to us and tell us anything. We promise not to judge, not to respond, but to listen first. And I remember being very intentional in telling Shawna that, and Jasmine as well. And suddenly they look back at me and says, Dad, why so random? Right? Yeah. And we just kind of, I keep repeating that for time to time. So the reason why I did that was just to let, especially Shawna and Jasmine, know that we have their back and we are willing to be their sounding board whenever they need advice, whenever they have something that's troubling them, that we can be their sounding board for them. That's the foundation. And of course, how do we encourage self-discovery and to affirm their own ability, right? To also know that they are an individual person that need to really find their own identity and not, forever be known as, the daughter of, so-and-so. And the way we try to do that, I have an acronym for it, and it's called APT. All right. And the A stands for to be available to them, to explore their interests and experience, like what I mentioned earlier, right? I think sometimes it's seasonal, what they like to do, and to be available together with them to explore those things, right? I think it's really helpful. And to, of course, the reason why we do that is also because we want to encourage, that curiosity and, that just finding out what clicks for them. in terms of their hobbies and their interests. So that's the A. Then, of course, the P stands for to pause and evaluate. So that's where we get them to say, okay, now you have done all this, right? What was something that you really enjoy doing? Or, what is it about maybe tennis or, making beads that really excites you? So we try to do that in order to basically maybe try to understand whether they are passionate about certain things they do, or whether they have found a new area of interest, where they can basically, or notice new skills even, and strengths in themselves, and basically try to affirm their efforts and their ability in this. And of course, last but not least, the AP, the T is to basically get them to take responsibility. So for example, when they have committed towards doing something, we want to make sure that they take responsibility to carry it through, to follow it through, whether it is a hobby or it's a project they're doing. And I think this is basically something that we try to instill so that they can basically discover themselves, but yet at the same time knowing that we are there behind them to support them.
I love that.
Yeah.
Not just because it's APT, but the thought process. Thanks for sharing. And I can really hear how intentional you have been, Josh, in terms of giving them space to explore whatever projects or whatever new interests they might like to explore, but also giving them a kind of framework to think about it and to decide what they actually wish to keep out of the exploration.
Correct.
And which they actually want to continue with. And I like what you said at the very beginning about how you had that random conversation and you just said, no matter what, you can always come to mommy and daddy, right? And that
we give
gives
them the assurance that we will not judge, we will just listen first. Sometimes it's very hard. But we just give them the assurance that we will just listen through first before we respond.
And that's the essence of a safe space, right? So thanks for sharing that. Shawna, I'm interested to hear from your perspective. What do you appreciate most about your dad during these teen years, or with his intentional APT, the ways he has actually intentionally parented you and your sister?
I think I really do feel the APT within my life. Like, he does carry it out quite often, especially like when we were growing like older into our poly life especially. There was like a lot of things that did happen in poly, and whenever I came into an issue with that, I was able to always go back to like both my dad and my mom and always like telling them like, oh, how should I approach this? Because I really kind of have an idea of how I want to approach it, because I do have my ways of dealing with either friendship issues or school issues, but I also wanted their input mainly because, okay, should I stop and think and process of how I'm going to approach this? And I'm very happy that they always like supported me in my hobbies and interests, especially when they came to watch us during the competition. That was one of them. I think it was nice that they don't really use the how's your day like that often. Also, they try to include more, like, we like to talk a lot about current issues. So whenever there's a current issue, like my dad will just bring it up like randomly, and then I will like jump in with my input also. And that's also one of the aspects that we were able to not only share our thoughts and process of how we think of this issue, but also how we should approach it, especially with like those outside of the family. Because when you talk to your family, it's different from when you're talking to other people outside the house.
It sounds like not just the APT was helpful, but also the not using so much of the how's your day, right? And I'm making a mental note here, like when conversing with the children, we tend to sometimes fall back on the typical questions like, oh, what happened today? How's your day? What did you eat? Which is
the administrative questions.
It's a little admin, it's a little mundane, especially if you ask it day in, day out, right? And then, so I think this is a really good tip for parents, especially of teens and young teens, to change things up a little. And it's really good to hear that when we have a space for conversations around the table, you can actually bring up different issues that perhaps even the kids might be interested in, you know, whether it's the latest trend that's happening on TikTok or whatever issue that you've seen or read about, right? So I think that's a good tip. I'm also thinking about some of the potential areas of conflict, right, that may arise during these teen years, where young people, they won't just want to go out and explore more, maybe have a little bit more freedom, or maybe even deciding to date. This all happens during this time. So I'm wondering, Josh, how do you navigate these areas of potential conflict or potential tension?
Both of them are growing older. We do acknowledge that they are forming their own opinions, and I must tell you that we don't agree on everything. That's for sure. And I also must admit that I've always failed in this area where, when it comes to issue that we don't agree on, issue of conflict, I'm actually very slow to listen but very fast to respond. It's a learning process to actually learn to be quick to listen, slow to speak. And also one of the other learning point is that we always respond. So when we respond when we are unhappy or in conflict, right, it's always out of anger. And I realized that always put a strain to the relationship or the conversation. So I also need to learn to apologize when those times happen. So one of the key things I feel is, I don't think the issue is about disagreement on a certain issue or topic, but it's really about having that open conversation. So if, for me as a dad, I keep putting down, any opinions or anything that is in conflict with what I think, I feel that it basically will cut down, the time that we will have open conversation. And so I know this is something that I think we are always learning. How do we agree to disagree? How do we basically have that space where we can really share without being judged? And I think that's something that we are constantly learning. While we do that, we also hope to basically discuss, clear boundaries when it comes to, like you say, wanting more freedom, or if not just our opinion, but our values when it comes to relationship. And I think that's something that we have always tried to communicate, not telling them what they should or should not do in the area of relationship or the friends that they mix with, but really to communicate our values. What is our family values when it comes to relationship, to dating, to even sexuality and family and all that. All this is communicated through this conversation. And of course, we always try to explain the reason behind our boundaries and our values. And to, again, like we say, right, always reassuring that while we may disagree on certain issue, we are always on the same side. While mistakes will be made, we learn to be quick to apologize and to really be able to give that assurance that we are always there for one another. And I think there's this saying that we always hear, that actually the best gift that you can give your child is the gift of your presence. Sometimes just being present, to listen, to really hear the heart of what they are asking goes a long way. Sometimes you just don't need to respond. Just being there to listen goes a long way as well.
I think that's so true. And even when, say, your teenager or your young adult child may be perhaps giving you the vibes that actually he or she may not even want you in the room, or may not want you to be looking over their shoulder all the time, right? But actually deep down, I think they do still appreciate your presence, especially if you give them space to just be and to just figure things out on their own as well. Like you said, to make their mistakes and to just support them no matter what happens, right? Yeah.
I thought there was a quote that was really meaningful for me as a father, that goes something like this. It says, "A father is neither an anchor to hold our children back, nor a sail to take us there, but a guiding light whose love shows us the way." That's my aspiration, to be that dad, to show
really
them the way
lovely.
rather than to hold them back or, bring them where they should be.
Shawna, any thoughts to add?
I think mainly on how my dad practiced trying to understand our views, especially when we're growing older. I think one of the disagreements we had, not that recent, but like it was a disagreement, was how late I was staying out with my friends. Yeah, there was a point in time when I didn't really text because I'll be too absorbed with spending time with my friends, talking with them. So I think we did kind of like argue about it at that time. But I think it ended with us like putting aside, okay, let us pause and think why the other person thought about that and why are they so angry. I can understand that my dad was mainly worried about me because like you wouldn't text and then you're too busy like talking to your friends, then you won't text, then your parents like be wondering where you are and all those things. So my compromise with my dad was that if I'm going to stay out later, I will update him like half hourly. So like I'll take photo or like I'll just drop a text or whatever. Yeah, but that is my way of showing my dad I'm still here. I just want to stay out a little bit longer. Yeah, that kind
That
of
sounds
thing.
like a very reasonable compromise indeed.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it helps probably to allay your dad's worries. Yeah. While still building that trust, right, that you have with
Yeah.
each other. So thank you, Josh and Shawna, for sharing about your lives and how you deal with, conflicts and tension in your relationship. Yeah, before we let you go, could both of you share maybe your last word of advice, to help dads out there connect better with their daughters or to help daughters out there connect better with their dads? Josh, maybe we can start with you.
Yeah, I feel that the really important foundation, so I'm going to use another acronym. The important foundation to connect well with our daughters has to be the foundation of love. The L of that love stands for, to listen and also to respond with understanding. So I think we always hear the saying, right? We always listen to know how to respond, but I think we need to listen so that we can understand rather than, just responding. And so the O of that love is to really take opportunities to spend time with them individually, because both my daughters are very different in terms of personalities, in terms of hobbies. And so we need to find time and opportunities so that we can spend time with them. It can be on a date or it can be something as simple as a grocery run. So I at least use that, because we do that very often. I use that opportunity to bring whoever's available so that we can have the opportunity to just spend that time together. The walking journey to any destination is always a good one to talk, because you're always walking in the same direction. So there's that motion where, it's relaxed and you feel more together in the walking motion. Then the L of love stands for the values. And I think one of the key things that I feel that really bring father and daughters together is when we are able to share our values and to pass on our values and our traditions, and to be able to see them applying those values and keeping those traditions, like, them making an effort in their busy schedule to just come back to have a meal together. That means a great deal for us as parents, because we know that they are making an effort to keep something that we hold to be very meaningful. Then, of course, the E stands for to empower them. I think the best way to empower our daughters is actually to set an example. Set example by doing good through helping people. Set example by working hard to succeed, to show them that there's value in working hard and seeing the success of all your efforts. And to empower our children by setting example, by inspiring them in the area of kindness through hospitality and generosity. I see that just as how we are kind and generous to people who are less fortunate. So we also see Shawna and as well as Jasmine really living that out by showing that generosity to their friends in need. And that really encourages us, that they're inspired by our example of doing all of this, and now they are trying to live that value out in their own lives. And so I think, these are just some of the ways to really connect well with your daughters. Start with the foundation of love.
Thank you, Josh. Principal trainer indeed. We've gotten at least 2 acronyms from you, APT and LOVE.
Occupational hazard.
Shawna.
I think the main points I wrote down is mainly communication, quality time, and exploring interests and hobbies together. I guess communication, because it is important to communicate with your parents, or in this case dad, about like what your current life is going towards, how they can support you and how they can just be there for you. Like sometimes you don't need them to like say anything, you just need their presence to be there. Quality time mainly to like just have that time to not be interrupted by like the world, because like there's so many distractions around us now. So it's mainly just to like sit down, pause with your parents and just talk to them about how are you feeling like now, because it's like mainly like also just check out on your parents, because like they're also stressed, they're also human. And exploring interests and hobbies together, I guess, is also because me and my dad connect a lot through like our interest for tennis. So sometimes he will ask me to play, especially with like my sister also. So we'll like try to play. Other times maybe I'll go to the gym with him. Then that also kind of like inspires us to spend more time together. But it also kind of like bleeds into quality time.
Thanks for summing it up so nicely for us, Shawna.
No problem.
So thank you both once again. To our listeners out there, we really hope you've enjoyed this episode and will try to apply some of the tips that's been shared by Josh and Shawna today. And if you have benefited from this episode, do remember to share it with a friend who might also learn something from it as well. For more parenting resources, do visit our website at family.org.sg. And remember to keep tuning in to the Parentnet podcast to learn and grow in your parenting journey.